budgets tonight. However, that's at the current time. We all know that things change as we go along, and with potential federal money coming in, all these numbers could be different. You know, the number I'm working off of is 22,646,000.
That's the official number.
That's the number that
Yes.
right, that we're working off.
We're $1,074,000 short from that
Well,
number?
no, that's
What's that
a
number?
$1,074,000 short if we had a 6% increase.
Okay.
We have a
Okay.
7.8%
All right.
increase,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
that would put us probably 1.2 million
Okay.
short, approximately. But again, this year, I think it's always difficult this early, but this year is even more difficult because of the outside factors that we don't, everything from the governor's proposed tax increase in room and meals tax to, to what's going on with the federal stimulus package. So there's gonna be more unknown factors this year than usual. So that, we would potentially have, with the number we're looking at now, a $400,000 budget increase next year, over this year. Now, when is the next finance planning team? Is that this Friday?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I'm assuming at that meeting, we'll hear more, we know more about what our official number that we're gonna work toward. And I guess from our standpoint, and I'd like to hear from the other committee members, and I know Cliff mentioned at the last meeting, Cliff discussed potential override or, taking action at town meeting. From my point of view, I think, given the current economic conditions, I personally feel we have to work toward whatever number the selectmen give us and try to work within that budget. But I'd like to hear what the rest of the committee has to say about that, if anybody wants to. I just don't think we have much choice.
But you're saying you're not in favor of an override?
I'm not, right. I'd be in favor, I'm not in favor of asking for one. But I just think we have to work within that budget and hope for more funds to come in from the federal government and maybe the state. I don't know if anybody else has any.
Well, I don't think there's much of an appetite out there for an override. Any place, I haven't heard directly from the Board of Selectmen whether or not they're even considering anything like that. Have you heard anything?
No.
I'd like to go on record saying that I'm not in favor of an override either. I don't think that's a nice thing to do, but at the same time, I think that we should be going forward with what we need in order to educate the kids in this town. And we need to do that in a reasonable way and in an adequate way. And if that means that we have to go to the people and ask for an override, then that's what we have to do. And I think it's an inappropriate thing to not do that.
Well, we are back to the cutting as opposed to building a budget. I mean, we're not building a budget, we're cutting from available, we're cutting to get down to available funds, is what we're doing. That's essentially what it comes down to. And we've done that before, and it's never a good result. At some point, you have to build it back up, but I'm just not sure this is the right time to be asking for any kind of an override. I just don't think we'll be successful.
Yeah.
And the cuts that are in front of us here are almost all of them require reducing positions and therefore probably increasing class size and reducing options for students too. So. But I would certainly, when I look at this list, I've gone over it and I've tried to do some addition, and I would certainly look at anything that doesn't involve the elimination of positions. I mean, there's things on here that, it's not things that you want to do, but, like the curriculum leadership in the building and different tuitions, fees, small capital requests, supplies, things like that. But those are things that don't get us all the way to where we want to be, but it doesn't involve teachers or even paras being reduced.
I think that before we go to the point of asking for an override, that we really have to make sure that as a town, as a whole, that our education and public safety are a priority. And I know everybody has services that they use in the town and that they feel very strongly about. So everybody's got a different priority order. But I would ask things like the library. I know every time we talk about reducing hours, we hear about not being part of the consortium. And certainly I appreciate being part of the consortium because I've used it myself. However, if I were given the choice of reducing hours and losing that great service and keeping teachers and public safety officers, then I know how I'm gonna vote.
I think the interesting thing on that, Maureen, and David can confirm this, I believe that we've already, at the middle school, we've already been forced out of the consortium that we used to be part of for the library in terms of borrowing and sharing because we don't have a certified librarian working at the middle school. So we've already lost that consortium that we
Right,
used
look
to
at
work
this
with.
room, look
Right.
at empty bookshelves.
Right.
But you know, sometimes change forces us to look at the way we do things and something better can come out of it. Our libraries, they look at this middle school library, I mean, the books are leaving. The ones that are here, they're probably older. And we don't even have time in the kids' days, we don't even have a library program. So it's underutilized, so it's time for change. It's time to look at how we deliver that service, not just to the general population, but the students as well. So I'd like to hear more about cuts to perhaps a library budget, not picking on them, but protecting education and public safety as priority in the town. What are some of the other things? How do they fall in that priority order? And then I know I'll take heat for this at the finance planning meeting, but I'll put it out there. We've got that money that's coming from the wealth suit. And it is targeted to go into the capital
It's
for
going
the
to the
water
water, right.
department. And certainly that is a good use for it. But I don't believe that it legally has to go there. It's gonna come through the general fund.
But you're coming back again to those one-time uses.
I
mean,
know,
that don't
but these
fix,
are,
you know.
I understand, you don't wanna take it and put it into a teacher's salary, because the next year, where does that teacher
Right,
go?
and then you don't have the water
Right.
projects that need to be done.
I think it's
But-
600,000 or something like that. It could be more.
Maybe you paid some debt service with it, maybe you do some capital purchasing with it. And I don't mean let's all throw items back onto the capital, because money shows up. I'm talking about in a very restrained way. How do we look at our revolving funds and our other little sub-accounts that everybody has? And I know we went through the exercise and drained them a couple of years ago, we'll do it again. But this town is looking at a big water project, we're looking at sewage someday in this town. $600,000 is not gonna get us that sewage, but it might keep some teachers and police officers and firefighters employed for another year. Certainly, I am in 100% support of moving forward with the water capital plan. But I'd like to hear a little discussion about how long that 600,000 will sit there before it's tapped into. And in the meantime, we're eroding our school department. So before I move to an override, those are the kinds of discussions I'd like to have.
Before we move to an override, what I'd like to see is every department in town cut to the same level as the school system is cut. And that is right at the marrow of the bone. That's the level we need to get our whole town government to. Public safety, public works, general government, libraries, everything needs to be at that same minimum level. And until we're there, we're doing a disservice to the children of this town.
Cliff, I brought it up last meeting, and I'll bring it up again, and I agree with you, but it's hard to explain to the public when you're already consuming 60 to 70% of the revenues, which we do. It's hard to explain to the public that we're not getting enough. I understand what you're saying, but if I'm sitting out there and saying,
60, 70%.
we already get 70% of the money, they say, other people say, how much more do you want? That's all I'm saying. It's hard to rationalize that.
I understand that, but the percentage means nothing.
Well, I know that,
What it
but-
is what it takes to educate a child. Now, the problem that we have is that in our town, we have a lot more children per general population
Correct.
than other towns. And that makes it harder for us to support the school system in the way that other towns are able to. Not that other towns are having it easy, by the way. We all know that they're all strained to the limits as well. But there's no place in the Chapter 70 formula to account for that. There are places in the Chapter 70 formula to account for other things. And, I've got an effort going on now to try to document that in such a way that the Chapter 70 formula will get fixed. My program to the governor to increase the sales tax has fallen on deaf ears.
He's increased every other,
Right,
he's gonna increase every other.
Gas
well,
tax,
he's-
20,
He's
20,
worked around the edges of it,
23%,
Right.
but not come right out and had
23 cents.
the effort to get that out on the table. There may be some money in the stimulus fund that will make us whole this year, who knows, but, we need to support the kids because every year the kids need to be supported. And if you don't support them, then you won't have that, they won't have that piece. One of the concerns that Mrs. Bailey brought out was, these kids that missed this particular piece of their science education at a lower level in their educational development.
Yes.
And so they won't not have that piece as it goes along. And if we do that to the rest of the educational system in the town, we'll have a whole year of kids who aren't getting that piece that won't have it later on. And we all need to be concerned about that because we need these kids to be well educated so that they can support the national debt.
But fundamentally, I don't disagree with you at all. I'm just
Oh, I
trying to point out that,
My family debt.
historically, people have looked at a meaningless town school split of somewhere between 60 and 70 and 30
That's
and
become a
40.
benchmark.
And that's become a benchmark, and it is meaningless.
It's
It is
historic,
meaningless.
but it's
Right.
meaningless.
No, I agree with you, but I think you're trying to overcome a lot of years of that history, that's all.
The plow keeps going by my house 25 times.
It's still going by,
And they
it
keep
it snowed the week.
every storm.
A lot of accidents last
It's
week.
21 to 25 times. And they keep spreading the salt on the road. And I'm big into safety, but for crying out loud, that means that we're not doing something else in town. It isn't business as usual anymore, folks.
Just to address one of Jerry's other issues here, Jerry, you were saying that, you'd support, before we got the staff, cutting other areas. Well, in the approximately 1.3 million that David came up with for our last meeting, about $750,000 of that is staff. So even if you take 550,000, we still have to find, if we don't get any more funds, we still have to find
Well,
another $700,000.
again, it depends on what the number is, but I
Right.
was just gonna ask David, that was a question I had, on the level one reductions that you've given us, are those realistic? I mean, those are, so decreasing supplies by 56,000 and kindergarten tuition, obviously, that's 35,000, but those are realistic numbers, I mean, even,
Well, If you want, we can take a look at those, and I can go through, some of these, I would strongly recommend, regardless, I mean, given the times, I would just say we should do this. The committee has voted already for the increase in the tuition, so
Right.
that's on, so if you have that sheet, I can go through.
Can I just
because this is a
ask you-
substantial number there that doesn't involve positions.
Right.
Before we move off it, can I just had two other items on this one that I wanted to ask. One area I think that maybe we could level fund, because it's just a guess, is substitute teachers. You have a $60,000 increase in your notation, say that we underfunded it this year. But do we really have any idea of who will go out on a long-term leave next year?
Well, the amount of maternity leaves the last 2 years have been substantial, well above average. Given the demographics of our staff, it's likely that that may continue. That's part of the thinking there. Having said that, our substitute teacher costs for FY09, the current year, will be down because of the decision we made on how we replace teachers on a day-to-day basis, not on a long-term basis. We're continuing to hire long-term subs, but we are using paraprofessionals to provide